Hello and welcome to this week's Aerospace Chronicles. I am Katrina Douglas.
And I am Bunmi Durowoju.
And this is the show where we share with you latest news stories, what's new in the industry, what's really resonated with us. It's also that time where you get acquainted with us, you get familiar with us. You can ask us any questions that you want in the chat. Even if you don't get to watch this live and you're catching the replay, just drop those comments and questions in the chat and we will come back to you. So we got a few interesting stories this week.
Always.
It's actually really interesting how much actually goes on in the aerospace sector in any given week. Given that it takes years for an order of an aircraft to come through. And actually, in some ways, from a manufacturing perspective, it can take quite long. Actually, in terms of news, there's been lots going on recently.
Yeah.
So we just want to share some of those stories with you. So we're kicking off with a feel-good story, actually. Vertical Aerospace. So they are an eVTOL company. So eVTOL, for those of you that don't know, many of you will know, electronic vertical takeoff and landing.
Hence mine.
And so, exactly.
Go that way.
And so a few months ago, many of you may remember that Lilium got into some financial trouble after having tons of investment. They ran out of money. So it's really good to see that actually we have a homegrown eVTOL company actually making strides. And so this is Vertical Aerospace. They're based in Bristol. And this week they've launched, they have a record-breaking flight actually across the English countryside. So the longest flight ever, I believe, but let me read it to you. So a British Vertical Aerospace, so Bristol-based firm pioneering the development of flying electronic taxis, has made European aviation history after successfully piloting a flight across the UK countryside.
Brilliant.
And it's amazing that actually this is a UK-based company. You know, there have been there's cynics out there. Some say actually they're over optimistic about when air taxis are going to happen. But we know it's going to happen. Air taxis are actually going to happen. Will it be as soon as they think it's going to happen, or will it not be? I don't know. But the thing is, you will have vertical flying taxis soon. Well, relatively soon. It's not going to be, 50 years, 100 years. I mean, within the next 5 to 10 years, I think you're going to start seeing these electronic vertical takeoff aircrafts, at least for short journeys, maybe from airports to and from, maybe from, I know the Formula One are doing stuff with eVTOL as well. So you'll be ferrying guests to and from Formula One, for example. So I don't think you're going to be seeing the long haul flights for a long time, but actually quick trips, I actually think that we're going to be seeing in a relatively short space of time. And so the fact that they've made history this week with this flight, let's see, where did it go? So it's actually called the VX4 prototype. And it performed its first wing-borne flight last week, soaring over the Cotswolds before landing like a conventional aircraft at a nearby airport. So that's amazing. That's amazing.
The thing about this is that the investment is continued to be made in this area. That's huge. Yeah. And also thinking around the regulations, because I think it's the safety regulations that's going to be sort of massive in terms of sort of landing and taking off and where, and especially if it's city bound and what have you. But that's all being thought about
exactly
already,
so you even see more vertiports being created. So the infrastructure for these aircrafts is different, especially if you're taking off and landing in a high density location. So it's not just these planes that need investment, it's the infrastructure around that. It's also the social and cultural shift that needs to happen, because even in the minds of people, seeing like the idea of taking a taxi in the air that takes off vertically as opposed to, a regular taxi. But that's where we are. We're in the age of the Jetsons. And actually it goes on to say it's aiming to begin first use flights in 2028. So we're looking at the next 3 years, and I actually think that's doable. A couple of years ago, we were speaking about this when we first entered the space, and they were saying 2025. I thought that was premature, but actually 2028, given the progress, I think that's quite realistic. And like Bunmi says, I think the sticking point is going to be regulation and certification. But if they can move past that, if they can navigate some of those challenges, I actually think 2028 is a realistic milestone. What's also I like about Vertical Aerospace is that they've stood the test of time. So I remember coming into the sector a few years ago, and they were there, and now they're still here. And whereas, you know, the players like Lilium, who had more of the fanfare, who had more of the branding, who had more of the hoo-ha, you're seeing them going into challenges. And actually here we have Vertical Aerospace, and we have Vertical Aerospace, and we're going to champion them because they're homegrown, they're British. And so we absolutely love that. And
I do say though, I know with Lilium as well, knowing how long they've been working on it from scratch, like, I do hope, and I am sure the knowledge, the data, the sort of fail fast learning that they had, I hope it's been passed on, it's been built on, because that was certainly not wasted.
Exactly.
Wasted effort from the guys who are not around in name anyway, but hopefully their legacy is there for these guys to build on.
Absolutely. And I just want to finish on this quote from Jonathan Reynolds, Secretary of State for Business and Trade. And he said, "This is a fantastic milestone for Vertical and for the UK's world-class aerospace sector. This is definitely exhibiting sector leadership." He says, "Breakthroughs like this show how government and business can work together to keep the UK at the cutting edge of innovation." So watch this space, guys. Do follow Vertical Aerospace. A very interesting journey, and I think they're going to get the prize. They're actually gonna reach those goals, and so we might just be flying Vertical Aerospace.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Exactly.
It's been one of our favorite, one of the lines, a storyline that we've been following for a long time.
For a long time.
We might be passengers. So actually, going up and going up even further. You know, I insist on making sure that we break through the atmosphere. So I've got a piece, and it's by a company we haven't talked about, I think, before, and it's Lockheed Martin. And it's going space and beyond, really, up and beyond. Look, they have just completed the assembly and the testing of a new spacecraft called the Orion Artemis 2. And I love them. We're kind of learning how these things get developed and then they sort of pass on. So the language is that they've finished assembling and testing, and now they're transferring possession to NASA. And it's they're transferring it to NASA's Exploration Ground Systems team. Now, this aircraft is being built in order to get a crew of 4 astronauts up. And the intention is for them to land on the moon. And for it to be a mission establishing the first human presence on the moon for exploration and scientific discovery. And it's the first spacecraft to do this. Now that's interesting because that's the introduction to their other ambition, which is actually to send people over to Mars. And I know I was being cheeky a little bit with you again. Maybe they should go to Mars first.
Go to Mars
and not mess with the moon. Like, I've got a slight worry about hanging out in the moon, you know, affecting things. But we can talk about that later. But the fact that we've got these aircraft now in testing mode, we've had conversations about what goes wrong with testing, but the fact that it's got through testing, 4 astronauts are getting ready to go up, and we're going to see what happens. I mean, they've the Orion, the spacecraft itself, it's its most advanced craft which has got this human rating. So it has to have this human rating where it is high enough and quality enough to take humans out there into deep space. So it's the first one that has been developed to this level. So I mean, the way that every week we're hearing cutting edge. So watch this space. Let's see whether they get to the moon or not in this great Lockheed Martin.
And it's a real name to watch. Many of you watching this will be familiar with Lockheed Martin. Those of you that aren't so familiar with the aerospace sector, but they've always been quite innovative. They've always been on the cutting edge for the last 85 years, actually. A long track record in defense and doing innovative things. And they've stayed ahead of the curve, actually. So it's one that's definitely worth watching, because they continue to do great things, and you can almost guarantee that whenever there's a big mission or there's a new aircraft or anything like that, that Lockheed is involved somewhere along the way. So they're fun. Really entrenched in the sector. So,
and I love kind of like the nail, you know me, the sound bites as well. So the vice president of the human space exploration and Orion program, he said that the Orion spacecraft completion of Artemis 2 is a major step forward in our nation's effort to develop long-term lunar presence.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point.
It's like a movie.
It's literally like a movie. And actually, I think that's a good point to hone in, that this is no longer science fiction. Actually, there's credible organizations, credible people that actually are trying to increase our human presence out there in space. And that's fascinating. Who would have thought in our lifetime we would be seeing this? You know, actually taking more people to Mars, taking people to moon. Like they're increasing the number of space stations. We're going to see an increase in the number of space stations in the next few years. We spoke about that when we went to SpaceCom. And this is real life, guys. And that's why we do this. We bring this to you. And you know, much of what we do at the Launch Strategist is about bridging that gap between those who are entrenched in aerospace and space, and those of us who maybe don't have a background in aerospace and space, and bringing some of that skill set into aerospace. But actually, just bridging the gap, because it's not far away out there. It's happening, and it affects us all. And we're at the point where actually you can find stories about what's happening in the news every day. Every day you're hearing stories about aerospace and space, and so it's important that we keep our finger on the pulse. So now, a bit closer to home, this is quite funny. We found this quite funny. So budget airlines actually are trying to trial, apparently, the rumor now has it, apparently.
I have to interrupt this. How budget can a budget airline get?
How budget can a budget airline get? Vertical seats, my friends. Vertical seats. So that's what was in the news last week, that apparently they're testing these vertical seats. So originally known as Skyrider 2.0. So they originally came on the scene in 2018, didn't go any further. Very interesting that although this has been in all the major newspapers last week, the Independent, Daily Mail, were covering this story, none of them, the airlines are being actually quite stum about it. But honestly, we would definitely not put this past the likes of Ryanair and EasyJet. First they took away food, then they took away baggage. Now they're actually going to take away seats. But would we actually? Who would actually travel?
Well, okay. First of all, I've asked Trina. When we put this out there, we're going to try and get a picture.
Have a picture.
Because I was just like, how am I going to carry my bags if I'm standing up? What's going to happen with this? And what happens when there's, when they're like, strap in, because there's the turbulence. Are we going to be just like the wind? Apparently not. They are quite interestingly designed structures, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there is a back. There's a back.
There is a back, and apparently there's more padding than there was when they initially brought them out in 2018.
Really?
Like, yeah, there's a little bit more padding, but it says the redesigned seats, which would see customers leaning at a 45-degree angle, have reportedly met safety requirements and regulations and could be in use in planes as soon as 2026. Now, the silver lining is that these are going to be very, very, very cheap. But come off it, guys. Even if they're £1, we know they're not really going to be £1. But by the time you put the cost of the backpack, by the time you've got a sandwich,
there'll be extras for the seatbelt.
There'll be extra for the seatbelt.
I'm just saying extras for the seatbelt.
Yeah.
Extras for like how far your feet can go.
Exactly.
And what have you. I don't know.
Yeah.
How budget can this budget airline
how
go?
budget can it actually get? But we found that quite funny, guys.
And the picture is actually quite interesting. It does look good.
Kudos to the designers, the interior designers that are, and they've got it through safety regulations. So even if it doesn't go any further, like kudos for them, like they're really the commitment. Because to get certified, anything certified on a plane is no mean feat. Did you guys know that actually to get a fork on the plane, it has to have certain regulations? So the level of certification and regulation is no easy feat. So the kudos for them to actually getting that. But whether or not we're going to be flying standing up remains to be seen.
Cheaply.
Yes.
It has to be cheaply.
Yes.
It has to be very cheap.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can even pay me. I don't know if you could pay me to fly standing up.
How long are we going to stand for?
That is a question. Like, how long are these flights going to be? Like, but the good, you know what I've just had, a thought that I've just had, when you're sitting, the risk of thrombosis, at least maybe that's kind of, if you're standing, maybe the risk is less.
It's a thing. There's a lot about this. Maybe
there's some benefits, guys, that we're not seeing.
This is not the end of the story.
This is not the end of the story. Let's see. So what have you got next for me?
Okay. So we'd like to give you a little bit of information from the continent of Africa, and so that, and I like to keep an eye on it, as you know, to see how we're keeping up. So we've just heard that the Egyptian Space Agency has now formed a training collaboration. And this is really important because I think every week we talk about the capacity, the dearth in capacity, the dearth in skills, and it's something that you and I are looking deeply into in other channels. And so from a capacity building perspective, they have entered into an initiative. It's a training program, and it's going to host 21 specialists from 20 African countries.
Amazing.
Which is great. And it's going to focus on strengthening satellite technology skills, and also there will be obviously collaborations within the African space industry all up as well. But I like the fact that yet again we've got another country that's looking into the skills, the need and requirement. And we know Africa as a continent has a massive demographic. Massive. Who are able to do that. So it's good to find out who's in the game and who's doing that.
Exactly.
And I think this is the first time Uganda step up. This is the first time I've mentioned Uganda in one of these ones. So Uganda is also going to be working with 5 other African countries to do a co-development of satellites. And again, it's these satellites aimed at looking at climate change monitoring and building technology, again, a capacity around the continent as well. So Uganda's in the mix. Good to see them there.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, a lot of news about Egypt actually.
Okay,
so it looks
interesting.
It looks like Egypt is kind of reaching out with the continent and doing some work there. So I didn't know that they were ones to look at. So I'm looking at them now.
I'm very excited about Africa. I think we're both very excited about Africa. And the plays they're going to be making in aerospace in the coming years. It's definitely an area that we're looking into quite deeply. And so expect to hear more from us about aerospace in Africa. Exciting times ahead. So another interesting story. See, Boeing keeps cropping up. due to their various issues. And so, we're not going to continue to, well, we never want to bash any airline. I mean, Boeing, their history in aerospace is not to be sniffed at. They've done a lot for the sector, continue to do a lot for the sector, but everybody knows they have fallen on hard times. And the latest is that Qatar Airways has cancelled their order of Boeing 737 MAX 10s. Now, the 73 MAX 10, I believe, is the largest in the 737 MAX range. These are wide body aircraft, and they have cancelled that, but continued to grow their fleet of A321neos, which is a narrow body aircraft that the Airbus do. So that's very interesting. Another hit to Boeing. But yeah, just hopefully Boeing can bounce back. But that was an interesting story. And it was interesting to see that actually, although the 737 MAX 8 is in operation, they've struggled to get certification for the 737 MAX 7, which is the smallest in the range, and the 73 MAX 10, which is the largest in the range, which is what we've seen the cancellation for. And maybe that's the reason for it. So apparently, the issues in certification is something to do with their de-icing ability in the engines. So they are having some certification issues, and this has been ongoing for years. I think in all of these live, certification will come up because it's such a crucial part of aviation and aerospace. And you see that even a company that has the legacy that Boeing has, can still have certification issues with new models coming out. So that was an interesting story. We'll continue to follow that. We'll continue to follow that. But it's interesting, actually. I remember when I was younger, I'm sure there were more wide body planes than we see now. Most of us tend to fly on narrow body planes. So that's really interesting. You don't really see the big jumbo jets. I remember going on the Virgin, and you could go upstairs, and there was a bar upstairs. I mean,
they are still there. They are around. They are still around, but yeah,
it seems like demand is less. It's almost like the aircrafts tend to do more journeys on smaller planes rather than less with the bigger planes. So I think we've seen that.
I wonder, do you think it's a fuel thing? I mean, there must be many reasons, but the fuel thing.
Maybe fuel. I did see, and we won't cover it in this one because I don't have it. In fact, I'm going to find it. Hold that, because I just remembered something. I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to find this story.
I was going to say, just picking up on that story, that the impact, the financial impact must be quite real, because they put the orders in so far ahead.
Yeah, they do,
and must make some, whatever the financial commitment there.
Yeah,
like what's been committed, what's been paid for, what part of the contract money is no longer going to be paid to Boeing.
Yeah, what do they pay up front?
That's it. What that contract, the value of that contract
is massive.
So it's
massive. So apparently it's significant. So in 2022, Qatar Airways placed an order for up to 50 Boeing 737 MAX 10 aircraft, including 25 firm orders and 25 options. So that's 25 firm orders. I think had they not had the certification issues, they probably would have been more of a financial commitment to follow through. But as they are having the certification issues, maybe that kind of gave them some collateral to say, actually, no, we're just not going with any of it, because the aircraft isn't even certified at this point. So let's see. We'll watch out for that. So what do you have next, Bunmi? What do you have next?
A quick one, just to sort of set a topic up, which I think we will be coming back to more, and it's less of a news piece, but more of a discussion that we are going to have. We haven't had it. We've talked about loads of subjects, but we haven't talked about AI much in the aerospace industry. And I know that we've talked about it with certain people, and some people have been very very cautious in terms of how they think AI is going to be adopted in the industry. But it's so ripe for innovation, for the AI innovation that can be brought into the industry
in so many ways.
And it's obvious. And also, if we even forget that we're just talking about AI, but we're just talking about the use of data and analytics and such in a smart way, I think that's happened hands down already in the industry. But it's going to be interesting to see. And we're not necessarily talking about generative AI per se. You know, we're talking about actually real AI in the industry, looking at real-time intelligence. We're looking at, like I said, real data analysis in order to be able to make predictions. Predictive maintenance is a massive one for the industry too. And also reducing the time and the cost of doing some of the repetitive tasks, huge in the industry. So because there are so many lovely different pieces for us to delve into, I'm going to be doing that from a week-on-week basis. So that's going to be fun.
That's going to be great.
And an example of that today actually is really the design and manufacturing process. Which we know because we hang out with the manufacturers a lot. And we know that, again, we talk about the skill shortage. We talk about like the time, how time consuming, how complex some actions are. And, you know, if these actions could be automated in a certain way, we know that it's going to revolutionize that area. And it does need to, because they're not necessarily keeping up.
Exactly. So we're very, very excited about what's going to happen in AI in aerospace. Very much got our finger on the pulse in that area. But that's all from us, I think, this week. That's all from us. I was going to share another story with you, but I'm going to save it for next time. And keep you guys guessing. Just to say, I don't think I said this in the last couple of lives. Like, some of you may not know what we do, but essentially what we do is we help aerospace companies launch their next level of growth. And what that means is that we help them increase their commercial capability and marketing effectiveness so that they are more profitable, scalable, and resistant to market change. And we do that in a number of ways. If you look at the top of this LinkedIn page, actually, there's an overview of our business and what we do and how we can help. So please do not hesitate to reach out. We're here so you can get acquainted with us. You can get a feel for us, learn about what's going on in the industry, and also to remind you that we are available. This is work that we do. This is the space that we work in, and we're going to be here for the duration. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for joining. Those that are joining live have joined live, and those of you that will catch the replay, we will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.